Welcome to Module 2, Part 2 of the course EPA304. In Part 2 of this module, we will take a look at large-scale assessments. There are three intended learning outcomes: to identify the characteristics and purposes of various large-scale assessments, i.e. cross-national comparison, monitoring tools, country diagnosis, etc. To differentiate between the age-based population and the grade-based population. And finally, to differentiate between the school curriculum-based test framework and the general competency test framework. As you saw during Module 1, measuring student learning outcomes is considered to be a crucial component to achieve the equitable quality education for all, whether at the classroom, national, or international level. For this reason, many countries have established large-scale national assessment mechanisms to monitor their students' achievement levels periodically. Many of them also participate in various large-scale international or regional assessments. This map, as of 2018, illustrates that many countries were participating in multiple large-scale assessments. But why is it necessary to participate in different assessments? You may wish to stop the video and reflect for a few seconds about why your country is participating in certain large-scale assessments. There are different kinds of large-scale assessments. The first group is the large-scale international assessments, where a comparison across countries is one of the major purposes. They are often referred to as cross-national studies. Large-scale international assessments aim to provide international benchmarks for key learning outcomes, provide information on development over time, trends, at regular intervals, provide information on learning conditions and how this relates to learning outcomes, provide evidence-based information for policy development, provide research and assessment capacity in countries, and finally, provide adapted tests aimed at developing countries based on the same metric scales. Examples of cross-national international assessments are PISA, PISA for Development, TIMSS, PEARLS, LANA, and so on. Cross-national comparisons could also be made at a regional level. However, the regional assessments aim to provide tests that are more directly linked to the specific regional context and culture. The regional assessments could also provide benchmarks at regional level, provide the trend information over time, provide information on the relationship between learning conditions and learning outcomes, provide evidence-based information for policy development, and finally, build research and assessment capacity through regional collaboration. Examples of cross-national regional assessments are PASEC, SACMEC, LLECE, CPLM, PILNA, and so on. There is another kind of large-scale assessment that is implemented in many countries, but the tests are adapted to individual country contexts, and therefore the comparability between countries is not the focus of the assessment. The Early Grade Reading Assessment, EGRA, and Early Grade Mathematics Assessment, EGMA, were created by the Research Triangle Institute, RTI, of USAID in 2007, in order to measure the literacy and numeracy of children in grades 1 to 3 in developing countries. EGRA was implemented in over 70 countries in 100 languages. Another type of large-scale learning assessment is called citizen-driven assessment, based on a household survey. The original iteration was called the Annual Status of Education Report, ACER, which was implemented in a small village in India in 2005. It was then carried out every year and included the collection of assessment data for children ages 3 to 16, including out-of-school children. Subsequently, ACER was carried out in India and Pakistan. There was also an East African version of ACER called Uwezo, which takes place in Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda. It is also implemented in Mali as Bekungo and in Senegal as Jagandu. and in Mexico as aprendizajes. You have seen that there exist a variety of large-scale assessments. Do you remember which studies deal with the pupils at the primary level? Which studies deal with students at the secondary level? And which studies deal with pupils or students at a certain age? Let us now look at how some of these assessments define the target population in more detail. Target population is the entire group of people to whom you want the assessment results to be generalized. It is defined to address the main policy and research questions of the assessment. There are two general approaches. The first approach is to define the target population based on age. For example, PISA and PISA for Development use the age-based target population definition, which says 15-year-old students in an education system in grade 7 or higher. Here the focus is the coverage of the cohort of the 15-year-old. The second approach is to define based on the school grade. Most of the other cross-national assessments, such as PURLS, TIMSS, SACMET, PISEC, and LLECE, use the grade-based target population definition, which focuses on a specific grade or set of grades, regardless of the age. There are some advantages in the age-based target population. It could provide simplicity and straightforward interpretation about what the students know and what they can do by the time they reach a certain age. It is also considered to provide an efficient sample design at a school level because a sample students of this age cohort can be drawn across different classes within selected schools. There are some disadvantages as well. First, it seems challenging to agree on the common age cohort to be assessed because of the differences in terms of the education structure. Secondly, since the students of a certain age could cross several grades, it would be challenging to link the teacher or classroom background information with the students' learning outcomes. Grade-based target population also has advantages and disadvantages. First, in terms of data collection, sampling of a classroom is much more practical than sampling students coming from different classes. In terms of analysis, far more background information on teaching practices and classroom conditions could be linked to the learning outcome data. However, it is also a challenge to agree on a specific critical grade cross-nationally due to the difference in the education structure. In addition, because the individual's experience in education, such as coming to an education system later than others or having to repeat grades, the age of a certain grade could vary a great deal. You have also seen about what subjects have been selected in each assessment. You may remember that many of these assessments have reading and mathematics. Which assessments is incorporating other domains that are urged in the Incheon Declaration? Which assessment is concerned about what students have acquired on the curriculum? Which assessment is dealing with what schools did to prepare the students for the world of work? Let us now look at how each assessment defines its test framework. The test framework is a blueprint of the test which describes the rules of defining what should be learned and what test items should be constructed. Even with basic subjects such as reading or mathematics, the test framework in each subject may not always be the same. Most of the cross-national studies use the official core curriculum. For example, the framework used in TIMSS, PURLS, PASEC, LLECE, CPLM, and SACMEC is based on the school curricula of participating countries and is defined by the areas of contents as one dimension and the varying cognitive taxonomy as another dimension for both mathematics and reading. On the other hand, PISA and PISA for Development focus on the competencies useful in adult life and the world of work, rather than on the school curricula. The test framework is three-dimensional, made up of contents as one dimension, process as the second dimension, and situation as the third dimension. One of the advantages of the test framework, which is based on the school curriculum, is that there is an effort to have a strong linkage between the intended curriculum and the test items. In addition, since many countries have extensive experience in implementing the national examinations, the capacity to develop test instruments is likely to exist already. On the other hand, it could be challenging to harmonize the varying curriculum contents across the participating countries. Now, stop the video and reflect on other advantages and disadvantages of the school curriculum-based test framework. In addition to PISA and PISA for Development, there have been many advocates that have defined the test framework on general competency that may not be related to the school curricula. Examples of these competency include problem-solving skills, information literacy, sustainable development knowledge, learning to live together, collaboration, and so on. These competencies are considered to be forward-thinking, not backward-looking. They focus on the knowledge and skills that can be applied in real life. However, some of these competencies require careful definitions within the framework, since the agreed definitions may be limited, unlike the school curricula. Consequently, this task of competency definition would rely on the external experts rather than the curriculum department of the national ministries. In Module 2 of the course, we identified the types of learning assessment, including classroom tests, public exams, and large-scale assessments, while also distinguishing between formative and summative assessments. In this second part of the module, we saw an overview of large-scale assessments and differentiated target populations and test frameworks.